All right, so the second topic, and this one's kind of a long one, but it is student achievement scores have remained largely unchanged no matter how much education funding is increased. Therefore, funding is not the driver of student success. What is?
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming today. Is this better? Thank you so much for coming out today. This is the Wyoming Republican Party debate for the superintendent, for the superintendent of public instruction candidates here in the state of Wyoming. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for coming. We have Chad Howard, Steve Harshman, and Tom Kelly with us today. And moderating this debate is going to be David Iverson from Cowboy State Politics. And David's going to explain the rules of the debate and how we get started. So if you'll join me in a round of applause for David Iverson.
All right, thank you, Carrie. First, I'd like to start out with prayer. So if you please all bow your heads, and gentlemen, if you could remove your cover. Heavenly Father, please bless tonight's events. Please help us to keep our thoughts focused on you. Please bless the candidates that they could speak the truth and to defend their positions. And finally, we ask that you bless every single person in this room and just help them with what's ever going on in their life. We ask all of these things in your name. Amen. Now, if you could join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. Let me just take a few minutes and tell you how things are going to work tonight. Before everything got started, I had some draw numbers. So, Tom Kelly, you're number 1, Mr. Howard, you're number 2, and Mr. Harshman, you're number 3. So we have a number of topics tonight. We'll probably cover 4 of them. And the speaking times will be as follows. The person to speak first on a topic will get 3 minutes, the second person will get 3 minutes, and then the third 3 minutes. And then the person who spoke second will get the first 1-minute rebuttal, and this person who spoke first will also get a 1-minute rebuttal. And then we'll swap, and we'll go down the row again, and we'll just keep rotating speakers until we get through all of our questions. But I've also thrown them, or I guess given them perhaps, a bit of a curveball. So I've given each of the candidates 2 minutes, which they can use in 1-minute increments at any point during the debate. And so if there's a topic that they think that they just got to respond to what another person said, well, then they're just going to flag me down, and they'll get their extra minute. Nobody has seen the questions ahead of time except for me. And I wrote, all of them are straight down the middle within the duties of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. I put them all in here and mixed them all up, and so not even I will know which order the questions are coming. So I'd like to begin by giving each of them 3 minutes for an opening statement, and we'll begin with Mr. Harshman.
Yes, okay, great. Can you hear me all right? Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Appreciate you organizing this and giving us this opportunity. Appreciate the good people of Weston County coming out tonight. My story is really a Wyoming story. I was born in Natrona County and grew up in Midwest. I was a Midwest Oiler. Spent a lot of time in Upton. Some of my lifelong friends are Upton Bobcats. You know, the Cook boys, and McPeter boys, Watt and Morgan and all those kids as we grew up. And, you know, I think my first paying job was docking sheep. Got $1 or $2 a day, my 4 older brothers. when you were 16 back in those days, and you guys remember Midwest, we used to have thousands of pump jacks. Before that was thousands of derricks, and now it's all CO2 injection, so all that's gone. But back then, when you were 16, you could work on an oil rig. So I worked on a workover rig when I was a 16-year-old kid, and really, my dad was in the natural gas business, World War II guy. We really just had a great childhood. We had ultimate freedom, played every sport, marched in the band, shot every critter, had all kinds of fun. And I think, all of us are probably sitting here tonight, probably because some teacher, somebody that, certainly our parents, but some teacher that had an impact on us. And certainly that's part of my story. But I think been just so blessed to spend really most of my life in Wyoming schools. As a product of Wyoming schools, my 4 kids are products of Wyoming schools. I hope my grandkids will be. My wife Becky is here. 39 years of marriage. I've been so blessed. Raise your hand. She's a lifelong educator, tremendous first grade teacher, and so blessed. And so my focus on this whole thing, super excited. I've worked hard in the legislature for years, and I want to, bring some great leadership to our WDE, because it's about our kids and about our future. And so our kids can stay right here in this state and live the American dream. So thank you all for coming out.
Now we'll let Mr. Auer introduce himself for 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, David, and everybody for showing up here tonight. My name is Chad Auer, and I am, let me start by just saying one of my favorite parts of the campaign so far, and it's been a long one, has been getting to know these guys. We're on the same tour for the most part, and good gentlemen here, and I'm working hard to keep up with those folks. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. 20 plus years of experience in education and community leadership and policy leadership. Started out as a teacher, not afraid to tell you I was a mediocre teacher. It was a tough job. Became a principal and then a district administrator. Also served as a mayor and most recently served as a senior policy advisor, Governor Gordon. I also worked at the Department of Education as a deputy superintendent, chief of staff. I understand the policy environment. And I went to the University of Wyoming Law School when a lot of folks in education go to get their PhD in education or their Doctor of Education, which are very important degrees. I went to the University of Wyoming Law School because education, and particularly education policy, is very legal. And so I think that to be in educational leadership, you should have a lot of background in a variety of different places in the mission of public education. And a law degree also helps navigate a lot of the policy pieces. My campaign could be summed up in this, is that I believe that Wyoming schools have a strong tradition of dedicated teachers, strong communities, and high expectations. And I think, and the reason I'm running is because I think the best way to honor that tradition is to embrace the future with courage and optimism, because our kids are we're needing to prepare them not just for citizenship to take the reins of our republic, but we're also needing to equip them for a rapidly changing world. We have an obligation to provide a public school system to them that adequately prepares them for the future and not the past.
And now 3 minutes for Mr. Tom Kelly.
You need the applause afterwards, Chad. That was for you. My name's Tom Kelly. I am born and raised in the good old Midwest outside of Chicago. And the first time I saw the West, riding my motorcycle with my friend, and we saw it, and I said, someday I'm going to live out there. This is fantastic. So we moved to Colorado. And it didn't work out how I planned, because I am a father of 6. I'm looking to raise my kids. I'm looking for a great community. I'm looking for freedom, open skies, clean water, clean air. And things went politically south in Colorado. So we moved to Wyoming. And I figured this is it. Live my quiet lifestyle now, taking care of my family, working my job. And I got pulled into politics. And I got pulled into it for a number of reasons. But rather than go into that, why superintendent? Out of all the elected positions out there, I am a lifelong educator. My first job was a summer camp counselor. I worked as a parent. I worked as a public school teacher. I worked as a social studies teacher. I worked as a special education teacher. Even though I wasn't certified in it, I was offered the job because I was good at being innovative and reaching kids who were having difficulties. You cannot raise 6 children on a teacher's salary. That's one of the issues, which I'm glad I was part of the recalibration committee to make sure our teachers got some raises that they deserved. I'm also on the education committee as the House District Rep from Sheridan, House District 30. But I'm nonetheless still an educator at heart, which is why I decided I was not running for re-election. And superintendent would be a good position for me. Having worked from 6th grade all the way up to teaching graduate level students, as I'm currently the department chair for political science at American Military University. Now this is fantastic because they're 100% online, mostly retired and active military. We're 11 times the size of WYGOP as far as enrollment goes. I've got a giant political science department. I've been the head of it now for 11 years. So I know education from 6th grade all the way to graduate school. I've taught at levels. I've taught in public school, private school. I've worked in special education, regular education. And what I see right now, what inspired me to run, was the fact that there is such a dedication to excellence in Wyoming. But there's been a top-down approach from the United States Department of Education to the Wyoming Department of Education, from Cheyenne down to the districts, which I think has really made some districts struggle being able to innovate and do something besides have to teach towards the WYGOP test. Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So a couple of items that I neglected to mention. With the topics, you're going to notice that they aren't questions. They're all statements. And the reason they're written that way is that it forces our candidates to take a position on them. If they were questions, well, we might run the risk of one of them just saying, well, yeah, I agree. Well, that doesn't tell any of you anything about them. And so all of the topics are written as statements. You may find some of them that you agree with. Some of them you may say, now, David, I don't know why you wrote that one. But they were all written for a purpose. And then the only other thing that I neglected to mention earlier is I may ask a follow-up question during the course of the debate, and in that event, everybody will get 1 minute to just respond to the follow-up question. But we'll just see how we go. So let's begin with our first question, and this one will go to Tom Kelly first for 3 minutes. And here's the debate topic. Teachers should be evaluated and be held accountable through performance-based metrics. You have 3 minutes.
Just to clarify, we're talking about merit-based pay?
The topic says performance-based metrics. So let me read the topic again for you. Teachers should be evaluated and held accountable through performance-based metrics.
With the current system, no. And I know some people like the idea of merit-based pay. That you have a good teacher, they get paid more. That's a good concept for a free market system, but not the statewide system that we have right now. When you don't have market incentives necessarily to be able to pay the best teachers, we run the risk then, and this is something I actually agree with the union on. We run the risk of people who are friendly with administration getting bigger pay raises than people who might be maybe stand up for their kids, or stand up for parents, or stand up against policies they don't like. So the short answer is, I don't see a way to work in performance-based standards. Some would say to go based on testing. But one of the biggest indicators of whether a school will be successful in testing is socioeconomic status of the community. And some of the most difficult districts to teach in have some of the lowest incomes. So some of your best teachers working the hardest would get penalized because their students were getting lower scores than people in some of the more affluent districts. And I understand that we do have an equalization process of equity for paying the schools, but I'm talking about family life, family structure, and community. So again, the short answer is I don't see how we could effectively work in merit-based pay into the current system, and I don't think anyone has an appetite to uproot the current system.
Thank you. Now for 3 minutes, Chad Hour.
Awesome question to get things started. Love talking about education policy. I think the good professor has brought up some good points. What I would add to that is I don't know what that is. I won't take it personally. Yeah. Folks are getting the lead.
Yeah, could you just pause the time for a minute, Stan? All right, we'll just take a minute to see if this subsides, and if not, speak louder. I don't know if it will or not.
This place is full of love. You can tell the people that like to be with old people because they really take care of you good and are very kind.
Twice a day, every day, the activities people have an organized activity that's always interesting.
Everybody loves to play bingo. We play it 3 times a week here. We also have ceramics that you can paint. Really pleasant to live here. It's a good place to be.
Okay, well, let's get started again. And where we left off was with Chad Hour. And he has 3 minutes. Let me repeat the question for you to be fair. The topic is, teachers should be evaluated and be held accountable through performance-based metrics. 3 minutes.
Okay. Let's see if I can talk over the hailstorm. Like I was saying, I think Professor Kelly has brought up some good points in that there are some factors that are out of the control of faculty members or teachers, and I think it would be unfair to hold them accountable for those factors. On the other hand, I think that incentive-paid programs can do what they say, incentivize innovation and good instructional practices in a system that oftentimes can resist change and resist those innovative, positive instructional practices. So I think as superintendent, if we hire me to do this, I would be interested in working with some school districts or some people out in the state of Wyoming that might want to do a pilot program to experiment with some of these things, but I would do so cautiously because, again, I think that a number of the factors that impact student achievement and performance of the school are some are inside the control of teachers and others are not.
Okay, thank you. Now for 3 minutes, Steve Harshman.
Okay, I'm going to talk loud in this. I'm not sure you can hear me. I think it's more exciting out there than maybe in here. It's really something. You never want to complain about moisture. State legislators say that water is our most precious resource. I think it's our children. Water's number 2, so I'm not going to complain too much. On the question, I think these gentlemen both answered it. The thing about teaching is there's a science to it, certainly. But there's an art to it as well. And I think it's a process of continuous improvement. As a teacher, I would teach first period. I would say that can reflect work, you can tell. You check for understanding, gauge your learning, and change a little bit period 2. So all these things, I think we've gotten too carried away with standardized information, and a constitution prohibits
prohibits the state prescribing textbooks, we worked that around with No Child Left Behind and standards-based testing. My life had 41 English standards in first grade. 41 English language arts standards. So we kind of went into this whole thing. We're going to say we're going to somehow grade whether a teacher is effective or not, based on probably a standardized test. Makes no sense. And so I was just saying, I think Mr. Kelly said, the number one predictor for child success in school is parents' income. Through all of, there's outliers and everything, but that's the number one predictor. And as a teacher, you're into customer service. You're going to love them up. Most kids are coming, right? To be fed, to do activities, to be with their friends, to join you, to be loved. Most of them aren't waking up in the morning, hey, I'm going to school to learn algebra. I don't think that's their first thought. And so teachers play such an important role in this development. And to try to minimize the profession by saying we're going to pay you based on some goofball test made by an out-of-state consultant, I think I'd rather do it like our Constitution says we should. Leave it up to local school boards. So the state, the superintendent cannot prescribe textbooks. Our Constitution is very strong in that matter. It leaves it up to the locally elected school board. It's so important. So that's what I'm at on this, and again, honor our teachers. So again, thanks, I think it's a great question. It won't work. It doesn't work forever, it's going to try. So thank you.
All right, thank you. For our first rebuttal, Chad Auer for 1 minute.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would add is that I think a good analogy would be to evaluate, should we evaluate emergency room doctors on how many sick patients show up? I think that's probably not a good metric. What really the best metric would be is to evaluate teachers on the growth of students. Are teachers able to, and it's not teachers themselves, it's we as a system, are we moving kids from point A to point better? And if so, I think that should be rewarded and incentivized. But again, I think that system should be done so very carefully.
Okay, thank you. And for our last rebuttal on this topic, 1 minute for Tom Kelly.
The topic of teacher pay, I think you all kind of touched on this, is really outside the purview of the superintendent anyway. His position is to just implement the laws effectively and as efficiently as possible. So that'd be more something to the legislature anyway. I would just say, superintendent, the last thing I would want to do is lay down more rules and more reasons for districts to chase test scores, because that would detract from them being able to innovate and meet their students where they are.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to our second question, and we'll begin with Steve Harshman. Pick that one. All right, so the second topic, and this one's kind of a long one, but it is student achievement scores have remained largely unchanged no matter how much education funding is increased. Therefore, funding is not the driver of student success. What is? 3 minutes.
Okay, great question. Okay, so I think you got to talk about what standardized tests are. Now, this all came about after No Child Left Behind, and I call it No Consultant Left Behind, and we really created the education industrial complex and the standardized education. The standardized test, whether some of you remember we started with YCAS, and then we went to PAWS, and we went to YTOP. There's a political decision that about 50 or 60% of your kids will be proficient or above. And that's how the cut score is set. I remember when I was on the accountability committee for 4 years of my life we did this work. And I remember we went from YCAS to PAWS and our scores jumped up. I remember the consultant saying, we're going to have to raise the cut score. There's too many proficient and advanced. See, because it's a bell curve, it's meant to separate. It's not like the ACT. You could compare an 18 on the ACT to what an 18 was 20 years ago. Let's talk about the ACT. Wyoming is one of 16 states that test everything. When I authored the Hathaway Scholarship, part of that I authored that we would pay for one test for every junior. I authored the Hathaway Scholarship. 50,000 Wyoming kids have taken part in that. Really proud of that. Guess what, where we were 2 years ago, the 16 states, and I've administered the ACT. A lot of kids do this. Don't answer one question. Unless you're in Kimmer, Wyoming, where the school board said you gotta get a 15 to graduate. And those kids are taking the test. But guess where Wyoming was? We were number 1. Last year we were number 2. It'll be interesting to see where we're at this year. The NAEP score, which is the nation's report card, we're always in the top 5 in 4th grade reading and math. Sometimes in 8th grade, I think we gotta have that question. What happened? The 8th grade reading seems to drop. I think we gotta have that question. But I remember back at, 15 years ago, Mississippi had 90% proficient in advanced because they set their own cut scores. And see, it's like the high jump bar. If all of our kids jump 6 foot, we're gonna raise it to 6'1". And then we're gonna raise it to 6'2". So it doesn't tell you how they're doing compared to like the ACT. But conversely, the problem with standardized testing, if our kids only jump 5'9", we're gonna lower the bar. We'll lower it to 5'8". So we keep that bell curve where about 50%, 60% are proficient advanced. Is it useful? It was meant to be to guide instruction. As a teacher, I remember we would have, question analysis. If all my kids missed question number 3, I didn't do a very good job teaching it. And it's the same thing with standards. If all my kids missed standard 41 in English language arts in 1st grade, for goodness sakes, I know I gotta do a better job teaching. But guess what? We've gotten away from that. We don't even let teachers look at it anymore because they're teaching to the test. Let's get back and figure this thing out. We've gone way too far with this. And so yeah, our kids are doing great. I want to tell you, we win the ACT, we're top in NAEP, and guess what? Our kids are in the top 10 per capita joining the military. Our kids are patriots. Really proud of our kids. Thank you.
Okay, for 3 minutes, Chad Allen.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to clarify the question real quick. Is it a question about the link between student achievement and funding?
Let me read it to you again. Student achievement scores have remained largely unchanged, no matter how much education funding is increased. Therefore, funding is not the driver of student success. What is?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. So, let me say this, is that I think that education funding, the enterprise of public education is a huge investment of time and human resources, and I think we all recognize that. The mission also is that we're going to give all kids, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, we're all in on all kids. That is a sizable investment. It's also fair to ask for a return on that investment from taxpayers. I think that our accountability system, our standards assessment and accountability system, is due for an overhaul so that we can accurately decide if we are getting the return on that investment, if we're making the right level of investment, financial or otherwise. That being said, what does drive test scores, or actually what does drive outcomes in education? Well, it's so dynamic, and the folly is that anybody that says, oh, it's simple, we just need to, and then they have this fill in the blank, it isn't simple. And the quicker we recognize the fact that student achievement scores or student achievement levels, proficiency levels, are dynamic, the better off we're all going to be, and we align our system around that. But the other thing is that another metric that I think is important is employment rate and GDP of the state and our economic vitality and how many of our kids are staying here and being productive citizens. These are all metrics that don't show up in our current accountability system, but they should, in my view. We're suffering from an antiquated standards, assessment, and accountability system that's designed for the past. It's not designed for the future. I think we owe it to our kids to do a real crucial conversation and roll up our sleeves and create a system that not only serves our kids, but shows America how to do public education right.
For 3 minutes, Tom Kelly.
Thank you. First of all, I have to kind of dispute the statement that assumes that spending has no effect. There are diminishing returns. If the school system inadequately funded, that's going to have negative effect on performance. But there's a certain point where throwing more money at it is not going to make things better. As we see in New York spending $35,000 per student now, they're not getting any better. And I think especially the new recalibration bill, putting an extra $100 million into education, enough funding is there. So if it's not money overall, there are two things I've seen in my educational career. Number one is parental involvement. If there are parents that are involved, the kids tend to do better. And number two, it's the relevance, is the education relevant? I was choking on that word. If it's not relevant to the student and they feel like, why do I have to learn this? There's a lot less investment into it. So the superintendent's job is not to go around the state and get parents involved. It's not to make sure local districts have relevant curriculum. I believe the job of the superintendent, if I were to be hired to do this, would be to, one, look at the state standards and prioritize towards what they should be learning, the basics, and then have the state take a step back and allow our thousands of educators and parents and local communities to lead on the curriculum. When we offer opportunities for parents to be involved, some still won't, but more will. More parental involvement means better results. And if we have more local communities involved in the curriculum, that means more relevancy. Wow, man, I'm talking with that word today. It's going to be my retention. We have more relevant curriculum to meet the kids where they're at, whether it's CTE or college prep. That would probably spike performance when you have kids actually interested in what they're learning and not asking, why do I have to do this?
Thank you. For our first rebuttal on this topic, 1 minute for Chad Auer.
A rebuttal. How about just more? And I'll keep it pretty short here. I just want to say that in my view, the mission of public education is never something we ever master or achieve. It's something that we're always chasing. And that's important because it is a we enterprise. It is not just teachers or administrators or parents alone. It's a group effort. So to the question, what drives student achievement, I think Professor Keller made a good point, is that it requires a lot of elements. The other thing is, and I think it's important to say, is that we're running for an executive branch agency leadership role. We're not bonus legislators. This is not a bonus legislator role. This is an executive branch leadership role, and I think that's important to understand the boundaries on this particular office. Thank you.
And our last rebuttal, 1 minute to Steve Harshman.
Yeah, thank you, and more on that topic. I appreciate this conversation about testing because it frustrates me when I hear legislators who talk about our students and our scores, and they don't really know what they're talking about. And so I want to tell the story and tell the truth, and I think that's part of being the superintendent. When you're the leader, the tone at the top is so important. Right? What you say, how you manage the organization, because we're going to become what we say we are. We got the best schools in the country, maybe the best schools in the world. We're currently like 14th out of 50 in cost per people. We're not number one. We're not spending the most. So what drives student success? Parents, absolutely. But you know what? I think there's 235 students here in Weston 7. We got 200 homeless kids in Casper. We got 300 in foster care. So schools are filling the gap and doing the best they can. So we're working that thing because every child deserves that. And finally, I'll just say, we pay 100% of special education. We're the only state. And if that's the worst sin we do when we reach the pearly gates, I'll take that one. So thanks, I think we're doing great. Sorry.
Thank you. So our third topic for the debate will begin with Chad Hour. And that topic is, oh, you're gonna love this one. The Superintendent of Public Instruction has a vote on the State Lands and Investment Board. There should be no preferential treatment to any energy company. 3 minutes.
Without a hailstorm, I'd like to make note. All right, my friends, I agree with that statement that the members of the SLID board should be objective, they should be transparent, they should understand due process, the quasi-judicial role that role requires, constitutionally requires. My law degree combined with my experience as a mayor and as a planning commissioner, as well as briefing various members of the SLID board over the years. I understand that role, and so very specific to that question, I think that Wyoming citizens and the Constitution requires SLID members to be impartial, transparent, respect the quasi-judicial role, that no ex parte conversations. They should hear, and if you hire me, I'll be pretty boring on the SLID board. I know hasn't been the flavor of the SLID board lately. I don't see it as a stage. I see it as a fiduciary responsibility. I will listen to the applicants, listen to the opponents or the public through the due process hearing mode. I will listen to staff. I will very judiciously apply the Constitution to those applications, and then I'll make a decision. I'll vote according to those filters, and I'll do so in a way that will, like I said, be transparent, and I'll be upfront and tell you why I'm going that direction. And my votes will also be ones that will not only understand the immediate gain of those decisions, but also keep in mind the long-term fiduciary responsibility. We need to make sure that we're not sacrificing immediate gain for long-term value. Those lands are meant to be leveraged for public schools, as well as they're a resource that needs to be stewarded for the long haul. Those are my thoughts on it. I didn't even get the 15-second one. Let the record show. Oh, there it is.
All right, thank you. For 3 minutes, Mr. Tom Kelly.
There's not a lot to add to that, so I probably won't need all 3 minutes. The purpose of the State Land Investment Board is to maximize proceeds and do it in the benefit of the public schools for the most part. So what we're looking at here is, when we talk about different energy companies, prioritizing whether it be wind and green projects or whether it is more the legacy industries such as coal, gas, and oil, shouldn't necessarily be done. But what we mean by an objective playing field is, a flat playing field is that we don't give special breaks or bonuses to our preferred companies. And what Chad was saying is completely correct. Each project should be evaluated on its own merit. Is it going to maximize proceeds, and is it going to do it long term? Because what we need to do with the lands that we have is maximize their value, what they bring in, and not exploit them for a quick buck. That is one thing I'd be a little bit worried about on the State Land Investment Board. The idea of a big pot of money in the now, which is why I'd be completely against ever selling any of these public lands to try and get that money in the meantime. So it would be just to make sure, does this make sense? Is it going to give back to our communities? Is it going to protect our lands? And the final aspect would be, is it going to violate any private property rights in that area? It can't have negative impacts on people's property values. But short answer, treat all the energy companies on a level playing field.
Okay, thank you. For 3 minutes, Steve Harshman.
Can you repeat that?
Certainly. The Superintendent of Public Instruction has a vote on the State Lands and Investment Board. There should be no preferential treatment to any energy company.
Okay, guys, I think let's clear up some confusion. We're kind of linking two groups together.
The first one is the state land board. That's created in our Constitution, 1890, 5 electives. We had 4.1 million acres of trust lands, right? And that started with the Northwest Ordinance before we even had our current Constitution. And those are working lands. I tell you, some politicians sold off 1 million of them though. We got 3.1 million left. We've stepped in and stopped that. I'll guarantee we're not going to get rid of it, any acres of our 3.1 million acres as a state land board member. Okay, but those are different than BLM and forests. Can't go camping on them for 10 days free, right? These are trust lands that are supposed to be working. Some are for the state hospital, some are for the university, some are for the blind, the deaf, and most of them are for our public schools. Okay, so let's be clear on that. And I'll number one, protect private property rights. Number two, I think being a good neighbor. You know, that gravel pit in Casper you all heard about, that's right in the middle of my house, District 37. I've spent a lot of my life now working on that issue. Yeah, we should mine gravel, but not with an LMO right above 300 people's 30-foot water wells. The whole geology, and LMOs don't require the pre-testing of water. Bad location. The board had it on the consent list, a change of a lease. It wasn't grazing lease. So as a board member, that would be my first red flag. Is this a change of a lease? We're not going to have it on the consent list. All 5 of them voted for it. Now they've all backed up. So the state land board is really important. But the board, I think, the State Loan and Investment Board, created in 1919, I think, by the legislature. Huge economic driver. Did not say no to oil 120 years ago, thank goodness. That's why we're number 1 on our plates in Natrona County, because the Salt Creek oil field is the largest oil field in the world. We didn't say no to rare earths recently. We didn't say no to coal 50 years ago when the Clean Air Act was passed and Appalachian coal then went away. And they came out here for clean coal. The State Loan and Investment Board, Governor Hathaway went out and recruited them. Got on the state airplane and went and got it. Because Montana's got 3 times the coal we got and less overburden. They should have went there, but they came here. Thank goodness. And I'm not going to say no to our future. Right? Things are going to keep changing. They always will. But we know ag is going to be the heart and soul of our state. We know minerals are going to be huge. We know we're the equality state, the first government in the world to grant women's suffrage. We're going to save our values, but we're going to keep going so our kids can stay here and not have to move to Colorado for a job. Right? So that's what I'm going to do on the State Loan Investment Board. Thank you.
Our first rebuttal for 1 minute, Tom Kelly.
There's really not much to rebut. We all pretty much agree we're not going to be selling our public lands. We'll take each project as it comes in based on its merits, and I don't think any of the 3 of us up here are saying that we're going to say hard no or show favoritism in any industry.
And our final rebuttal on this topic, Chad Albert, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll just say this. One of the first opportunities I had in the campaign was to go to Cody and visit with some high school students. And the reason I'm telling you this story is the first question out of their mouths was about the role on the SLID board and the land commissioners, et cetera. That is, I think that's a testament to our education system, that our high school kids recognize that the state superintendent sits on the SLID board. That's all I want to add to that.
All right. Now for our final topic for this evening, we'll begin with Tom Kelly. Here's the topic. The Wyoming legislature should create an additional funding silo for activities. 3 minutes.
Well, it's kind of an odd topic considering we're all looking to leave the, well, 2 of us are looking to leave the legislature and go to an executive branch. No, I don't think so. What we're working on now in recalibration is something that was laid bare by the instructional silo, that money was being moved from teacher salaries and compensation to pay for other things like activities. So we passed a bill, bipartisan, passed the recalibration committee 12-0, Democrats and Republicans, progressives and conservatives all voted for it. And we all agreed, while it might not be the most elegant tool, the silo of instructional funding was to make sure the teachers would get the raises they deserved and we could recruit and retain the bedrock of a good education, which is a good educator. When that happened, some districts found out now that they did have money sitting around in that instructional silo, but now they were short on money for activities. And they even testified at the last recalibration meeting, well, if you hadn't put in that silo, we could have covered it. So I clarified. You mean you would have dipped into the teachers' salaries to cover activities? That's not what we want. So we laid bare with the fact that we don't have a cost-based system for activities. As the recalibration committee continues, we have to find out now what is the true cost of activities, and rather than making a separate silo, another categorical grant, just make that part of the basket of goods, make that part of the general funding formula. And there's really no reason to just silo that out. Somebody even said we should probably just make activities part of the instructional silo, which would have defeated the whole purpose of keeping the money for teacher compensation. There definitely will be some changes coming up. For one, the recalibration formula for the activities that we adopted was our consultant's recommendation, and it turned out that about most of our districts got a little more money and some of the districts got huge cuts. So we're gonna have to backtrack on that and fix that formula, which we actually came up with one where the districts that get the extra bump in money get to keep it, and we restore the funding for the districts that lost it. No, there's no reason for another categorical grant.
Thank you. 3 minutes, Steve Harshman.
Thank you. I appreciate this question. Just talking more about the recalibration and the current change model. I served on 4 recalibrations. We had many inexperienced legislators serving on this last one. Many of them are saying, oh, we've not recalibrated in 15 years. That's not true. We recalibrate every 5 years according to law. We did it one time in the middle when we were flat broke in 2017. And recalibration is to study the model, make sure it is cost-based, and make small changes. It's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We got a great system. And so, I don't know, good grief. I mean, so I hope the new legislature will repeal some of these things. I think I classify it the good, the bad, the ugly. I think the good was, I think the reimbursements for special ed and transportation in a timely manner are going to be really helpful to districts. I think, some of the support for elementary counselors is going to be good. I think increasing teacher model salary, 85% of comparable professions, I think is good. All that's good. The bad, the 3 to 2 year rolling average on the ADM is bad. The $60 million cut to health insurance. Taking district investment income, 50% of that. That's a bad deal. It's not yours. Don't take it. What do you think if the federal government took half of our investment income? And then increase class size, cut 450 teachers out of the model. Now, and I know they'll say, oh, they weren't hired and all that. It wasn't fully funded. That was the issue. The court said, work on security, food, and elementary counselors and some technology. We did elementary counselors. Never did do anything with food service or security. And I think the ugly, the good, the bad, the ugly, you think that a legislator, there's only about 3 legislators that have kids in schools right now, 62 House members. Only about 3 that actually drop their kids off at school.
Wyoming's Republican State Treasurer, Curt Meier, is seeking another term because the work he has done is producing results. Last year, investment earnings became Wyoming's largest source of revenue for the first time in state history. And in his next term, Curt will build on that success and position Wyoming for the future.
For the future of Wyoming, strong leadership we can trust.
Paid for by the committee to elect Curt Meier.
You think that a legislator, there's only about 3 legislators that have kids in schools right now, 62 House members. Only about 3 that actually drop their kids off at school. Very few of them have been on the school board. None of them, except about 4 of us, actually teach in schools, work in schools. To think that a legislator who gets 1,500 votes knows more about their local community from Cheyenne than the school board members in this room
who got 3 times as many votes. I just don't buy that. And that's not our constitutional process, it's not our Wyoming way. I think the other ugly thing was the regional cost adjustment. We know it costs more in Teton County to hire teachers than it does in Torrington. Well, the current thing, Casper and Gillette now are supposedly less expensive to hire teachers than it is in Fremont County. I just don't believe that. When I look at housing prices in Riverton compared to Casper and Gillette, it doesn't work for Wyoming. And I think it was poorly done. And I think activity cuts, horrible. Gifted and talent cuts, horrible. And I think we can fix all these. Elections matter on August 18th. So thank you.
And finally, 3 minutes, Chad Allen.
Thank you for the question. So the short answer is no, I don't think that we need another silo. I think that, just to be, I guess, candid about it, that school recalibration should strengthen schools, not silo them. And actually, let's look at it this way. Which branch of our government has been more involved with school funding than any other? It wasn't the executive branch, it's not the legislative branch, it's been the judicial branch. I find that offensive. I think that we need to do a better job of having these very difficult conversations about how to fund our schools. We don't need to wait every 5 years. That's the minimum. We can have those conversations ongoing. We also don't need to hire for $1 million a pop an out-of-state consultant to tell us how to fund our schools. I think we can figure that out if we're willing to have those hard conversations right here at home. Here's another thing is that, yeah, there was some positive things about that bill that when it arrived in the executive branch. Just, I want to be very clear, I'm the only executive branch experienced person on this. So I'm not going to badmouth the legislature, but something that would have been helpful. Experienced legislators know this. What happens when you have multiple appropriations in a bill, that gives the governor the opportunity to line item veto pieces that aren't good. It was good to give teachers a raise, but it was bad to take away local control. This is my opinion, I don't know, this is just what I'm telling you, I'm being honest with you. We would have been way better off as a state if our legislature would have given us a bill with multiple appropriations, because we would have been able to fix it, which is what the executive branch tends to have to do. And like I said before, I think that we would be much better served if we would thank you, judicial branch, but this is not your job. But that's on us. We got to do a better job in the legislative branch and in the executive branch. In this role as state superintendent, we need to advocate for and thoughtfully engage in that policy-making process. Again, not as a bonus legislator, but as a state superintendent, we need to advocate for public instruction. That's our job, and that's what we need to do. I think we should. If you hire me, I'm going to advocate for investing as much as we can afford in public education, and I'm not going to wait every 5 years for that. That conversation is going to happen every day that I'm elected with our legislators and with our people, the community members. Because we owe it to our kids to get this right and also recognize that this is a difficult conversation. Silos don't strengthen schools. Recalibration and funding should.
For our first rebuttal, 1 minute, Steve Harshman.
Yeah, thank you. And I again, to think that in Cheyenne, legislators, the governor, everybody complains about top-down federal government. And then we turn around and do the same thing to our locally elected counties and school boards. It's not the Wyoming way. And education in Upton, the best town on earth, is different than it is in Cody or Everson or Casper or Cheyenne. And the local people who've invested their lives in these communities know that. And it shouldn't be from a group of 62 House members, 31 senators, who combined maybe have 10 kids in public schools to make those decisions. Hey, fund the thing and let's move on. And we can talk about funding, maybe in the closing part about property taxes and who pays property taxes, how blessed we are in Wyoming that minerals pay half our property taxes. But I want to talk some more about that in the closing. Thank you.
And to wrap things up, 1 minute, Tom Kelly.
So again, the job of the superintendent here is not to be necessarily second guessing the legislature or the fact that the failure to recalibrate resulted in the WA winning such a lawsuit handily for failing to fund the schools and teacher salaries. So that's part of the reason things happened as they did. Not going to pretend like this bill came out perfectly. As I was somebody who was dead set against things such as rounding up all teachers onto the state program or confiscating savings. Those are things I went against. But rather than rehash all that, very quickly about the superintendent's job now. Rather than sit around and point fingers and criticize what we would have done in Monday morning quarterback, is to come up with policies, rules, and regulations that are as flexible and usable as possible to most effectively integrate that law in there. So the WDE would need to come in there and make that recalibration bill with its coming attractions, which is going to be changed in it very soon, to make sure that it works as intended.
All right. Well, that concludes the topic portion of this evening. If you'd all give them a round of applause. And since we had a big giant hailstorm, I think I'll give you 2 minutes to just sum up this evening and make your case to the crowd. And since we started with Mr. Harshman, to open it, let's start with Tom Kelly, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks for having this, and thanks for staying here even though we were all panicked about our vehicles. I have to speak very bluntly about something, and this is where part of my personality comes in, that my kids understand and my family members know. This is why people tend to trust me with things. When we talk about NAEP scores, when 2/3 of our kids are not proficient, and then say, but we're one of the best states in the country. We are. It means we're doing something right. It means we should keep doing what we're doing right. Well, right now is not a time to circle the wagons around the status quo and just say throw more money at it and it will get better. We don't need a cheerleader talking about how great and perfect everything is without realizing that we can capitalize on all the things we do right. But then there's room for improvement. That's why we need a coach to step in there and say, great, we're doing this great, we can do this better. It's not an insult to our educators. Our educators are becoming demoralized. People are leaving the profession nationally because of all this pressure, all these attempts to mandate success from the top. And we need somebody to step back and say, can we please trust our districts and our educators to make these curriculum decisions, to make these delivery decisions on these? And this is separate. This is separate from the state providing funding and saying when we provide funding to make sure that you can hire good teachers, please hire good teachers. And then as superintendent, I would be the one who would go from district to district and say, how can I make your job easier? What is the state doing that is making it more difficult to deliver what your children need in your community? So if you vote for me for superintendent, you're going to have somebody who's actively listening as an educator, as a parent with a special needs son in the public school system right now, and somebody who's really there to do the job and not looking to run for something else in the future. Thank you.
Two minutes, Mr. Chad Auer.
All right, my friends, I think that this race is really the most important, unbiased, of course, but I think it's one of the most important on the ballot. And I encourage you to please do your research. Don't just think about your friendships or signs or anything. Do some research. It only takes 5 to 10 minutes, but research the candidates. The good news is you've got 3 good candidates up here. We all have a lot of things to offer. But we're also very different in some areas. So I want you to think about, I'm going to encourage you to look at the job and then look at our qualifications and make a judgment based on who you think is most equipped to do the job. Because I think here's what this all comes down to. Once again, we as Wyoming, we have a choice. Are we going to embrace the future with thoughtfulness, with courage, with optimism, Or are we gonna settle for some of the traditional bad choices, which are burn everything to the ground or just embalm the status quo? I think those two are bad choices and we can do better. Let's thoughtfully look to the future. Let's innovate, let's embrace the future without sacrificing our Wyoming values. I think we can do that, but it's the harder of the choices. The easier ones are those other two that I talked about. Qualifications also matter in this job. So when you're doing your research, you need to think about the fact that the state superintendent is general supervision of education, not supervision of teachers, not supervision of athletics or anything else. It's general supervision. I have experience in traditional schools as well as charters, as well as online schools, alternative schools. I've worked in rural, inner city, urban, suburban, Indian country, cowboy country, coal country. I'm going to take a couple bits of my time. Do I still have some time?
Like 10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Time's up.
Thank you very much.
No, you got 10 seconds. Yeah.
Did we mess up on the time?
No,
Okay. All right, finally, 2 minutes for Steve Harshman.
Nobody used their wild card.
Yeah, none of us took our bonus minutes. You're lucky. We can go out
I think you
and check
took
our
two.
cars out. So again, thank you for coming out tonight. Really appreciate you. I appreciate you organizing this for us. And I appreciate these two gentlemen throwing their hat in the ring. And, you know, when I first got involved in the legislative process, came home and I talked to my wife and I'd never done anything like that. First day I was ever in our state capitol was the day I was sworn in. I was a student body president at Midwest. That was my first foray into politics, but it's been such an honor to serve this great state. And I found it, and I think some of you who serve in some of these positions, man, you can do so much good. And Wyoming, we still are a small town with long streets. And I saw Governor Sullivan after church here a couple Sundays ago, and I always think of that when I see him. I just saw him this Sunday, but I think a couple things going on. I think the tone matters. I just heard one of our leaders the other night say, our kids are being taught to hate America. It's one of our state leaders. I watched that about 10 minutes to 10 at night before bedtime. Couldn't sleep. It's not true. And I just want to say that the governor's got his RIDE initiative. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The State Board of Education has got the profile of a graduate. And then the superintendent's got about 6 things on her website. I dare you to try to name them. And I think then we force people to kind of pick what political track you're going to jump on. I don't think our education should be politicized like that. It's about our kids. It's about the next generation. And if we can't come together in Wyoming, a lot of smart people, there's some great things going on around our state. I toured all 48 school districts. It's incredible. So when I wrote the Athletic Scholarship, I saved the CTE program at the University of Wyoming. I'll keep working for our state. And I'm not doing this to run for another office. I do it because I love this state, my home. So thank you all for coming out. Appreciate your support.
All right, thanks everybody for coming. That concludes this meeting today.
Thank you, David, for moderating, and thank you all to our great candidates for all your input. I do want to say thank you to Upton for hosting this debate. I reached out to Dr. Coberly, and he was so accommodating, and I'm really grateful that we were able to do this in Upton. So thank you to Dr. Coberly and his team, and thank you to Gina and Roxy, who came and set the whole thing up today. So thank you very much for that. I would like to thank the GOP for choosing Weston County for this Superintendent of Public Instruction debate. We're very grateful. And I would like to invite you all to tomorrow's Secretary of State debate. That will be in Newcastle. We will be at the Newcastle High School at 6 o'clock with the Secretary of State candidates. And we also have some wonderful young people who are going to come and help out tomorrow. It's going to be really great to see the girls and boys state people out helping with the debate tomorrow. So I hope you'll come out again. We'll try and do it without hail. Thank you all for coming, and have a great evening.